Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Kevin Sheehan, host of The Kevin Sheehan Show, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. here on the Team 980. Mr. Sheehan, good Friday to you, sir. How are you?
Mr. Hoffman, how are you on this Friday?
I am doing well. I'm happy that it is Friday. I'm happy that we are steamrolling towards free agency. We will finally get some answers on Monday to the direction this roster is going. But before that, we must deal with the Washington Wizards, who are more imminently, chronologically speaking, trying to avoid history tonight. And my question for you, as they try to avoid a record-breaking 17 straight losses, do you care if they break this record or not? Does it affect the long-term vantage point you have on this entire rebuild project?
Not even a little bit. I mean, I would like them to end up with the worst record as long as they are in that position right now. Let's just stay there and have the best odds at number one overall in a draft that really doesn't have a consensus number one. Next year's draft will. But no, it's like I think I haven't put my Wizards fandom, to the side. I've been always a massive Bullets and Wizards fan my entire life. I want them to be good. It's the team, Craig, for me, that's always been the one that I think. I mean, after Maryland basketball and the Skins, to me, the Bullets and Wizards are next. And I've always wanted to see what it would be like if there was an actual contending for the NBA championship team in this city, because I think it would be a massive deal. And I do like what they've done here over the last year, and we're just going to have to wait it out. But it's hard to keep a level of any sincere interest when you're 9-53. I'm not watching a lot of these games at all.
Yeah, no, I've tried to watch some, and it's just not good. The one thing that I think is interesting as of late is Koulibaly seems to have really hit a rookie wall. But for me, I'm not that concerned because I'm like, he hit the rookie wall. I don't all of a sudden think the league figured him out and he's actually not that good. I just think that, it kind of coincided with them putting him in the starting lineup too, is they upped his minutes, they upped his impact, and it came at a point in the season where he's had more minutes on him than he's ever played before in his life. So that's been kind of interesting. But is there anything else that you're watching these final couple weeks of the season here besides the kind of footnote of whether or not they make the history tonight?
I really have fallen in love with Deni Avdija as a potential future NBA All-Star kind of a player and a real, sort of cornerstone, not the superstar that they're going to need to draft in the next 2 to 3 years, but as a guy that really could be one of the, top three pieces on a team that wins 50 games in 2028 or whatever. I just think he came into this league. He was obviously a very good defender. What he also was a guy that had tremendous confidence right from the jump. Like, I think a lot of these foreign players are really fearless in a way that maybe some of the young college players are not. But he's always believed when you watch him. I think he's always felt like he's better than even he shows. But I think this guy's really gotten confident and he's gotten better offensively. And every time he takes a shot, like a three, if he takes a three, I feel good about it, feel good about the stroke. He's just a good, really good all-around player that has a chance to just keep getting better. And I feel the same about Koulibaly. Like, I feel really good about Koulibaly, but 19 and a 23-year-old that, in 3 years when they're 26 and 22, it could be really interesting if they've got, a 20-year-old that is ascending.
Yeah, definitely. I think next time I'm on your show, or when we have more time and free agency and the NFL is not bearing down on us, we should have a Deni Avdija discussion, because I think you're higher on him than I am, but then I get turned into like the biggest Deni Avdija hater, and I'm like, I'm not a hater. I don't know exactly where the ceiling is.
Well, what don't you like about him?
I think he's overrated as a defender, and he's like much less likely to be a top 3 guy on a 50-win team, and much more likely to be somewhere between 4 and 7. A really, really, like, probably 4. Like, I think he can be an 18.8 rebound consistently kind of guy, and that's a really, really good NBA player. But like, just because he's getting the assignments of some of the best players in the league doesn't mean he's actually doing well with them. Like, he's just routinely getting torched by these guys. And if he's this, like, part of the reason that they're so bad this year is because he's their second best defender, and he's just actually not up to that kind of caliber. Whereas, like, you think of the second best player on some of the best teams, and, like, Klay Thompson was an all-NBA defender. Deni Avdija is never going to be that.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is that Klay Thompson and Steph Curry never played on a team that was this horrible. And they're just horrible from a team defensive standpoint, too. Actually, I don't know that I completely disagree with you in terms of being overrated as a defender, because I think he's a good defender. I think people have described him as being a potential great defender. I'm just really impressed with his overall game now, and I didn't know that I would be that way 2 years ago. I mean, he's capable, if he ended up being the number 3 guy on a team with 2 stars in front of him, of being an 18 and a 10 guy.
Yeah, I think that's the ceiling. And I think that's possible. Maybe that's the third best guy on a 50-win team. It depends on how good the first 2 are. But we'll see. I mean, he's still ascending. He's 23. He's getting to the point where he's probably getting closer and closer to his ceiling. But he's definitely had, like, this. The last 2 months have been awesome. So definitely encouraged. We'll see what that looks like on hopefully a good team sometime before 2028, but maybe we are waiting that long. Kevin Sheehan is with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show. All right, now to our feature presentation, if you will, Kevin. By the time I take the air on Monday at 4 o'clock, you and Chris Russell will have guided us through the first couple of hours of free agency. Anything you expect kind of off the rip immediately to happen, or anything that you want immediately to happen on Monday for the Commanders?
I don't know what to expect. I'll take a stab and say that there are a couple of players. No, actually, the players that are their own, it'll take some time for them to go out and test the market before they come back. But an edge pass rusher, a Dorrance Armstrong from Dallas, because Quinn's, familiar with him. I'm a big fan and always have been of Daniil Hunter. I think he's now the prototype for the edge pass rusher, the taller, lankier, long-armed guy that just keeps tackles at bay and is very disruptive with length. And I just love him as a player. I think he's an absolute game wrecker at times. His issue, of course, has been health, and he's going to be 30. And I don't know if they're going to be looking for somebody like that. But yeah, there are players that I like, but I have no idea what they're thinking. The one guide for all of us is just like they told us when it came to the coach, they're looking for a great leader, and a lot of people ignored that. With respect to the quarterback, they've emphasized over and over again mobility. Now, the top 3 all have that. And when it comes to that player trait thing that Quinn talked about, Peters talked about, Kingsbury talked about, they're looking for finishers, competitors, physical guys. Like when you start thinking about the Deebo Samuels of the world and the Warners of the world and the Kittles, like they're looking for that type of competitor and personality. So, any sort of player with talent but that hasn't achieved, I would guess is not going to be on the list, no matter how young. And the overachiever, never-ending motor guys are the ones they're going to be looking at. Patrick Queen is an example.
That's a great point. If you think about the profile. All right, so let me run some names by you then. And obviously it's going to depend on the numbers for all of these, but assume that you're going to have to pay them for some of these guys. Justin Simmons is the biggest name on the market. All pros don't become available very often. Safety, which is a position that seems to be on the decline. It's a stacked safety market. Would you spend some of the very high amount of cap space they have to bring in a playmaker like Justin Simmons?
I mean, he's a great player. He's a many-time, All-Pro and Pro Bowler.
Four-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowl.
Okay, and he's going to be 31. And I just wonder, with the safety market being what it is, I wonder if they're going to participate in what might be, a bidding war for somebody like him. Although I think the glut of safeties on the market aren't going to help any of those players, but he's a cut above. So I don't know, Craig. I mean, like they've got, Quan Martin, they've got Derek Forrest, they have Percy Butler. I'm not saying that they don't need to go out and get another safety. They certainly more likely than not need another corner. But I've also just questioned here over the last week and just sort of putting two and two together, the available cap space and the fact that, Josh Harris had to go out and find 20 people to invest so that he could afford the team at $6 billion. And they've got coaches that they're still paying. They've got $75 million into the stadium. And I just wonder how super active on the high end they're going to be in free agency. And Simmons is going to be the high end. Be a great player, obviously, but I would be surprised.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he winds up here. I think they will spend a little bit. I don't think they have cash issues in the way that they have in the past. I hear what you're saying. I from what I've heard, the cash situation is just fine over there. And they're going to be able to spend. And it really is a matter of how much of this do we want to roll over into next year versus how much do we want to spend now, and what do timelines look like and all of that. But I think even from a football perspective, a guy like Simmons, you're making that question, like how much is it worth for you to have a potential all-pro in some years where you might not be as good because you have a young quarterback who's not quite ready for the big time yet, especially this quarterback class where you have people like Orlovsky out there saying, these guys might have to sit for a year or two before they're even ready.
Yeah, we'll see about, how active on the high end they are here. It wouldn't surprise me if there's actually some maneuvering with respect to back-end loaded contracts even to move into this cap year. But, yeah, I think the other thing, too, that we're not entirely sure of at this point is what kind of player fits what Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. are going to do here. They went from all that single high in Seattle. They changed significantly in Dallas. He's told you that there's more changes coming in terms of stylistically how they'll play. Turnovers, enforcing turnovers are always going to be a big deal with him defensively. And then offensively, what Kingsbury's really looking for as a fit. So there's a little bit of flying blind, but there should be when you have a complete regime change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kevin Sheehan with us, of course, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. here on the Team 980. The running back position is as deep as it has basically ever been as a free agency class. It's a weird position now if people don't know what to do with the contracts. If you're Washington and you're thinking about surrounding a young quarterback potentially, do you try to make a bit of a splash? Not like major money, obviously, because that doesn't go to running backs anymore. But do you go after a Saquon, a Derrick Henry, et cetera, any of these big names?
It's interesting because I think Robinson Jr. and even Rodriguez really fit that player trait that they talked about, the badass competitor, the finisher, et cetera. So I wonder if they'll really like their backs. But they do need, somebody to replace Antonio Gibson. I can't imagine that Saquon Barkley would come here. He's going to probably look to win. Derrick Henry's definitely going to look to win next year. But, would somebody like a Devin Singletary, who's out there, who's pretty versatile, who's definitely more and can be more of a third down guy, is he a possibility? Maybe. I didn't think about running back. You're the second person today that mentioned to me, what about running back? I guess I should be thinking about it because of Gibson being, gone. But, yeah, somebody like Singletary might make sense, but it wouldn't surprise me, depending on if Houston, lands Barkley, then he's obviously expendable.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, a guy like Pollard's super interesting too. Can you put him kind of back into what a similar role he was when Zeke was the number one guy there?
When Zeke was there.
Austin Eckler, is he willing to do that at this point in his career? I think Singletary is a great call as well. AG runs with physicality. If they want someone who can finish and has versatility, like bringing him back ain't the worst thing. But also, this is a draft where there's kind of every kind of running back, and none of them are going to go off the board early. So we'll see on that front. quarterback room to me is like the most interesting kind of thing to watch next week. And I don't even know if they wind up making a move next week or does it take a little bit later in free agency. I am of the opinion, though, Kevin, that they need to bring in a veteran of some kind to mentor / potentially and probably even be a bridge no matter what direction you go in the draft. Where are you at on how they build out their quarterback room?
So I do think it will be telling if they make a move there for a veteran. Obviously, for anybody thinking that they're not looking at quarterback at number 2, well, that'll be the tell if they bring in a veteran backup. But I'm also okay with Sam as a backup quarterback for no money for the next 2 years. They've got a lot of leadership and a lot of mentoring in that, on that coaching staff with Pritchard and Blau and obviously Kingsbury, who is, is mentor number A. But if they decide to go veteran, yeah, I think it'd be really interesting. Brissett may have a chance, Craig, to compete for legitimately for a starting job somewhere. Joe Flacco, probably not. Tyrod Taylor, probably not. I certainly don't think Russell Wilson's a possibility for here. I mean, if he was a possibility for here, what they should have done is traded cap space for picks and Wilson. Because Denver needs to free up some of that cap space, and who knows what Wilson will take if he'll actually play for next to nothing next year. But yeah, I think that's an interesting decision, and it'll be a bit of a tell if they're active in a veteran quarterback, in a true veteran backup quarterback situation. I mean, who were you thinking of? I mean, you weren't thinking of like Tannehill, who is going to look to compete to start somewhere.
Well, Tannehill is one of the guys that I would definitely want to have a conversation with and understand where he's at. Like, I know you didn't want to be a backup or a bridge guy or a mentor or anything in Tennessee. That was your job, but you were also the incumbent. If we bring you in and say, look, your starting job depends on how good this rookie we draft is, and if he's not ready, we're going to start you, and you might play the entire year. Are you okay with that? And if he's good enough, like he's going to play, are you good with that? And he says yes. He's actually probably the guy I want. I think especially if I'm eyeing Drake May. If I'm eyeing Jaden Daniels, I think Tyrod Taylor's the guy because that you're going to design the offense more similarly around that. And I would have the same conversation, Kevin, with Jacoby. I don't know whether he's going to be scarred by last year. Obviously, totally new group in charge. But I would have that conversation with Brissett over both of those guys to say, hey, are you okay with this setup? And there's, it's 90% that you're going to start at least week 1, if not beyond. But and I think that he's going to probably want to look at the market. But like those are the 3 guys that I think I'm circling.
Yeah, I'm not sure Tannehill buys into that. And you're right. You'd have to get a sense. I think Tannehill and Tyrod Taylor, are similar, very similar in style of play. I don't know that one is a better mentor for Daniels or versus May. I mean, I don't think Daniels or May are dual threat quarterbacks coming in anyway. And Tyrod Taylor and Tannehill have both been true dual threat quarterbacks at various times in their career. But yeah, no, there's a lot of options in terms of veteran guys. I just would expect maybe not. I mean, because we've seen it even with guys like Jameis Winston, in terms of what the market is. But I would think Tannehill's going to get $6 or $7 million a year. No.
Yeah, probably. But
I would be where he was last year.
Yeah, I mean, Brissett got what 10 last year. I would.
He was at 8, right? Brissett.
I might have been somewhere between 8 and 10, but like I would be willing to pay that. I think. I mean, this is the beauty of having $85 million in cap space is you can afford these things.
Yeah. And again, they may just decide, you know what, we got plenty of mentors here. We don't need to spend $8 million a year on a mentor or a bridge. We believe that May and Daniels are going to play right away, and we got a kid who's actually perfectly set up to be a higher end backup in Sam, which is really, I think, what we all realize he is. Not everybody realizes that, but most do.
When does anyone agree on anything, Kevin?
Well, I mean, the debates and the arguments about him, after certain games, like there's still a contingent of the fan base, aka the Howlers, that still believe this was all the offensive line and Eric Bieniemy's fault. and that they should run back with him for 17 games. There are people out there that believe that.
Oh, I know. There's people out there that believe a lot of things, but I'm going to stop there before I get myself in a lot of trouble. Kevin Sheehan, I believe that he is on the radio 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. weekdays here on the Team 980. What do your Terps need to do this weekend to secure a spot in the tournament? They just need, or I guess it's next weekend, but I probably won't talk to you until then. What do your Terps need to do?
They'll play Wednesday night in the first four. First time they've been in that situation in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
You're talking about, which Terps are you talking about?
I was talking about your men's Terps. The ladies Terps, hey, look what they did today.
They upset Ohio State today.
They beat
that was big.
tar out of Ohio State today.
Yeah, this is a painful year if you're a Maryland men's basketball fan. There haven't been a lot of years like this over many decades, but they've got a really good player in Jameer Young who's capable of winning a couple of games next week. So I'll root for that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens, and of course, every single one of those games will be right here on your home for the Terps, the Team 980. All right, Kevin, have a great weekend, sir. Thank you as always for your time.
Craig. Take care.
That is Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Hoffman Show. Check him out 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And if you can't because you have a day job during those hours that disallows you from listening to the radio, you can check out the podcast of the radio show, or you can check out the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast anytime, anywhere on your favorite podcast app, which might just be that free Odyssey app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.